And good morning, everyone. Hopefully, everybody's had a great weekend and good weeks leading up to this uh, chapter. We are going to be dealing with opening the business to business relationship this week, which is chapter 6 in your book. Keep in mind that this is the last week that we have before your midterm exam, which is going to be next week. So make sure that you're really focusing in. There's no need to miss out on easy points. So let's make sure that we're really dialed in this week and getting to the midterm break effectively and efficiently. This is a really important chapter. I know I feel like I say that every week, but it really is an important chapter because today we're talking about the opening the business to business relationship. Last week, of course, we talked about opening the business to consumer relationship. So some of this information will be a little bit repetitive. So a great chance to make sure that you really understand what we're talking about here. But as we talked about last week, the opening can certainly break a deal. It's not necessarily going to make a deal, but it can certainly break a deal. So ensure that you're focusing in on this because this gives you the opportunity to get to the decision maker and hopefully at least have a chance to have a conversation and hopefully set yourself up for success. So we're going to jump right into it. Here's some of the key terms that you'll need to know throughout this chapter. You're going to see a lot of different types of people, from the anti-champion to the decision maker to the gatekeeper. You're going to see a lot of different types of people that are here. Couple different approaches, whether it's bottom-up approach or the top-down approach. And then, of course, talking about sport hospitality and what that really entails and why it might be important when selling to a business. So, what are business to business sales? Simply, when we talked about business to consumer sales last week, it is a business selling to an individual or a consumer. This is the opposite of that. It's not selling to an individual, but rather it's selling to businesses for the primary purpose, mostly for entertaining clients and employees. A lot of times when we're talking about business to business sales, we are talking about premium tickets, suites, or club level, although we don't have to. A great example, my family personally, grew up right near St. Louis. And so we had St. Louis Cardinals season tickets to the baseball games. But again, my family business is a smaller business. So we weren't purchasing premium tickets or suites or club level, but rather we were purchasing, just 4 individual tickets in the lower bowl of Busch Stadium. So quite a bit of difference. Wasn't an opportunity necessarily to have 25 to 30 people at a game, but it was an opportunity to be able for my dad to be able to take clients to games, or contrarily, just for him to be able to give tickets to either his employees or to customers so that they could enjoy the tickets with maybe their families or friends. So it doesn't always have to be premium tickets, suites, or club level, but notice that when we're talking through this specifically, especially if, for example, if my family business might have been in St. Louis as opposed to almost a 3-hour drive away, maybe we're talking about a different conversation. But for these purposes, just think that for business to business sales, we are probably talking about, a higher level ticket value. With these tickets, we've talked a little bit in addition to that. So hospitality, of course, is important for these types of tickets and these types of relationships because it creates an opportunity to add extra value, but it also creates an opportunity to provide an opportunity for businesses to be able to have those integral conversations at games. You think about sharing food, breaking bread is always the quote that we use in the industry. So breaking bread with clients, showing an opportunity, but making sure that they're taken care of in addition to obviously the entertainment that's on the field, that there is other hospitality and food and drinks in a nice space, perhaps, especially as we talk about baseball being such a hot, sport during the summer, an opportunity to cool down and some air conditioning. So really you're just looking for something for everyone when you're talking about kind of business to business sales so that everybody can take advantage of this opportunity. And then the return on investment, we're going to talk a lot about return on investment this week. There's a return on investment for both sides, of course. And this is something that as you're selling to businesses, you need to make sure that you're explaining the return on investment, just like you would with business to consumers as well. Making sure that you're understanding and you're sharing the value of purchasing tickets. So the ROI can certainly be there for both sides, because typically, as we're talking through business to business sales, is typically a high value and a lot of money that's being spent. So certainly that's a benefit to you as a sports organization. And then obviously we've talked a little bit about the benefits that the business that's receiving the tickets can get as well. So we asked the question last week, is this the most valuable tickets to an organization? Are these the most valuable tickets to an organization? The answer is yes, because of the dollar amount that comes along with this. And again, typically when you're talking about suites or club level, things of that nature, you're talking about selling tickets for an entire season or extended periods of time rather than just one ticket or one game. So these are extremely cost effective. It's one sale that yields a lot of revenue for the organization. So yes, these are very valuable tickets to an organization, and many would argue that they are the most valuable tickets to an organization as well. And then lastly, you need to understand kind of who is the decision maker. And again, we'll talk about, difference between the gatekeeper and the decision maker. The decision maker is the person who's actually making the decision, the person who is in charge of saying, yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're not. So a lot of times as you're going through business to business sales, it's a matter of trying to get to that person so that you can have a conversation with the decision maker. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is just getting to that decision maker, but it is important. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So return on investment, simply what is the return or what is the benefit off of the investment or the money that is spent, okay? So think about in terms of if you've had any sort of econ opportunity cost. So what is the benefit to the cost, right? What are you receiving for the money that is going out the door? What is the receiving versus what you're paying for something? So there are a few things that businesses will measure when they're selling these business to business, products. The first is, trying to get the consumer, or rather the business, the person on the other end, the decision maker, to understand what they think percentage wise of customers that they'll be able to close with a person attending a game, right? So if you give this salesperson or you give this person from a company a great opportunity to go to games, then what is the likelihood that you'll be able to close the deal afterwards, after giving them this great experience? Is this going to heighten business? Is it going to increase the likelihood that you can close a deal? And if yes, then what percentage of customers do you feel like you'll be able to close after giving such a great experience of hosting them at a sporting event? The second measurable, when we're talking about return on investment, are how many transactions do we believe that will be made by those customers? So not only talking about bringing in customers, but then talking about the value of these customers, how many transactions that will be made specifically by these customers after this great experience. And then third and finally, what's the average size of each sale, right? So you're talking in terms of number of customers, you're talking in terms of number of transactions, and then now you're talking about the actual value of each of these sales. So when you think about these three things, you can talk about the return on investment. And when you're talking about return on investment, you need to make sure that, as they always say, that the juice is worth the squeeze. So what that means is, how much money are you investing into something? And is the value that you're receiving from that investment worth it, right? If I'm spending $5,000 on a ticket, then I need to make sure that I'm at the very, very least receiving $5,000 or more off of the investment. So it's the same thing if I am, paying money to show this person, this customer or this business a great experience, then how much money am I going to get in exchange of that? it has to be cost positive always. It has to be cost positive. If you're talking about spending more money that you're going to be making, then it's simply not important. It's not, what you should be doing. Another thing that you need to think about too is the long-term play of this. Sometimes return on investment isn't immediate. Sometimes it's not off of the first sale, but perhaps it's off of the second sale or the third sale or the fourth sale. So don't think short term in this either. If you think that you're spending $5,000 on a ticket and the first sale is going to bring in $3,000, but we understand that this person is going to be a potential client for a long time who's going to be bringing in even more purchase orders and more money, then we need to think of it that way as well. So that's important. It's not just short-term return on investment, but also long-term return on investment too. And tables 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 give a couple of ways to calculate those things. So it's important to look at. But again, at the very basic level, just remember that return on investment is the benefit versus the cost that you're spending. Okay. Or the revenue versus the cost. Return on investment, we talked about this. So either from increased sales, which we're talking about, conversion rate, so converting, potential customers to customers, and then also employee retention. On return on investment, we've talked a lot about, how it works external to the organization, but employee retention simply talks about the internal as well. A benefit of working for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, like I did for 8.5 years, is that we got the chance to get some really cool gear, really cool swag, but we also had the chance to travel the world, right? And that was only because of the organization that we worked for. So an ROI to keeping employee retention, retaining employees and making sure that they're happy and that they feel like it's worth working there is this really cool experience that we had to travel the world for the Olympic Games or the Paralympic Games or the Pan American Games or World Championships, things of that nature. So how can you incentivize employees to provide them return on investment for their time, their sweat, their equity that they put into the company? This is a great opportunity to do so. So let's look at B2B versus B2C. We talked about B2C last week. So this week, in terms of B2B, the reality is that when selling B2B, that corporations or businesses have a stronger likelihood of using all of the tickets. Like I mentioned in the example with my family business, it's not always the person who purchased the tickets going, but the ability to give those tickets away to customers, to employees, to whomever else that might be able to use those tickets. So a stronger likelihood that those tickets will be sold as opposed to maybe an individual person who, simply can't make it to 81 Major League Baseball games per year. And economies of scale, right? The reality is that by purchasing tickets in bulk, you're going to be getting a discount on those tickets. And you can think about it, if anybody has ever purchased season tickets, then you think about they're not giving you the market value for 81 home tickets, right? You're actually getting a discount. And if anybody is a Costco fan or a Sam's fan, this is how they operate as well. You basically buy in bulk, and because of that, you get a much cheaper price per unit. So if you're going to buy paper towels, you're going to pay less per roll of paper towel at Sam's or Costco because you're buying in bulk. So you're buying 10 rolls of paper towels. Therefore, the price per roll of paper towels is going to be less than it would be if you're just purchasing one roll of paper towels. Okay. So that's economies of scale in essence, that the more that you purchase or the more that's there, the cheaper it actually becomes per unit. Corporations can afford the price of the full season easier. Yes, there are a number of ways that they can categorize this. So we talked about, client relations. Certainly this money can be allocated in client relations. This money could be in terms of HR or employee relations, but it's not as easy for an individual to be able to do this because they're talking about their disposable income. And it just is simply more of a financial burden to take on as one person as opposed to an entire organization or a corporation who can see and they can actually benchmark based off of what we just talked about on return on investment. They can benchmark these things to show the value and show why the budget line is worth it. Corporations can benefit from hospitality. We've talked about this, not just from employee incentives, but from client relationships and just from the overall perception of the company as well. It's like, hey, I work for this company. Yeah, we have season tickets to the St. Louis Cardinals. There's a perception shown that, hey, this organization must be doing pretty well if they're purchasing season tickets to a Major League Baseball team. So business to business drawbacks. The reality is that there's usually a longer sales cycle because you're talking about more money. You're also talking about a bigger financial investment as well. So it usually takes a little bit longer for a sales cycle to get through to have a business purchase tickets. Usually there can be multiple decision makers. Sometimes a person may not have sole authority to make a decision like this. Sometimes it's a committee, which you'll learn is can be very, very stressful trying to get a committee to make a decision. In my work, specifically in sport tourism, I'm dealing a lot with government organizations, government entities, which can be even more difficult because you're talking about dealing with the U.S. government or a state government, which can be very, very tricky. Can be based off of dollar amount. You may have to have multiple bids. A lot of things that go into this. Changing decision makers is certainly another one, another drawback as well. So, how many times do people change their jobs? It happens all the time, especially within corporations and larger businesses. So you think about finding the decision maker and then all of a sudden that person leaves. Well, then you have to grease the wheels, so to speak, on that new decision maker as well, which can be very frustrating when you've spent time and effort to build up this information and this rapport. And then all of a sudden that person takes a new position and you're out of luck and you have to start from square one. And then selling the benefits of sport hospitality. There's not necessarily a direct correlation between a business purchasing or season tickets or a suite and then business coming through. There's no direct correlation there. So you really have to sell on the indirect correlation and how you can make it seem like it's a direct correlation of, hey, if you purchase this, our businesses usually have this much return on investment. They have this many opportunities to get touches with their clients or with their employees. And it's beneficial because of X, Y, and Z. So you really have to do your job of selling the benefits of sport hospitality because it's not as simple as it may be selling to an individual. Let's talk about social selling, especially in 2022. Social media is all the craze. Social media platforms, especially for professional organizations, usually has to do with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a really important and big one that is being used, that has been being used and is useful for a sales channel. So let's talk about the process of leveraging the seller's personal brand on social media to build relationships with clients that lead to appointments. All you're trying to do via LinkedIn or social selling is to land an appointment. You're not trying to give all of your information. I get a million LinkedIn messages a day that are talking about, hey, this is everything I have to offer. And I'm really usually kind of turned off by that. I would rather somebody be personal to me, somebody call me by the right name, somebody take the time to say, hey, I would love to schedule a meeting with you to talk to you about X, Y, and Z, or to talk to you about my organization, how we might be able to assist. And that is much more effective than just somebody word vomiting something into a very, very long LinkedIn message from someone that I don't know, right? So we're talking about LinkedIn specifically. So 3 steps to engaging decision makers on social media. Again, LinkedIn. The first is create a professional brand online. That's why at the beginning of the semester, we asked for you to create a profile on LinkedIn with a professional picture, with your education and your work experience. So creating a professional brand online, that's the first thing. If I get a message from someone and I'm even interested enough to click on their profile, that's the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on their profile. I'm going to see who they are, where they come from, what they do, and if we have any common references, if we have any people in common, any mutual connections. Second is building credibility within your network. So if you are a sales professional, you want your experience to show that you are a sales professional. You want your skills that are down at the bottom. You want your skills to say that you're proficient or distinguished in selling or relationship building or communication, client relations, whatever it may be. So building credibility. The other way that you can build credibility is having mutual connections. I can promise you, if I look at somebody's message and we have 10 plus connections, and 3 of which I'm very close with, then you're going to have a better chance of getting my response than you would if you didn't have anybody in connection with me. And then lastly is engaging with the decision maker. We're going to talk about the outreach of what that actually looks like is the engagement part. So when reaching out, this is specifically talking about social media, LinkedIn, but it could also be related to sending email requests as well. It says create a unique subject line. So create something exactly what we're talking about. It could be introduction. It could be connection. It could be the name of the businesses that you're talking about, your business and the other business, but create something that's unique and that's not going to look like a spam message. Same thing, customize and personalize the message. This is really important. Decision makers want to feel like they're being reached out to in a personal way, that they are that you're at least taking the time to customize and personalize the message, as opposed to just a blast email that you're sending to 100 different people. Reference or referral, we just talked about this. If you see that you have a mutual connection with me, put that in the message. Talk about, hey, I see that we both know this person. This is how I know this person. Would love to chat. Or you can even go further from that, and you can say, hey, this person's in contact or in connection with us. I'm going to have that person reach out and say, hey, so-and-so from this organization is going to be reaching out to you about this. So that's a good way to do it as well. Establishing common ground. We talked about that last week. Establishing common ground, who you are, what you have in common, what you can see from LinkedIn. That's the good thing about LinkedIn is you can see where somebody's worked. You can see, where somebody went to school. You can see their connections, etc. Offer a brief overview of how the seller can help, but don't get too specific. When I reach out on behalf of, Go Empire Group, I'm usually saying, hi, so-and-so, this person passed along your number. I hope it's all right. I'm from Go Empire Group, full services agency based out of Chicago. Would love to chat with you when you have a chance to do so. Let me know your availability and I'll accommodate accordingly. Right? So that's what it is. This is who I am. This is what we do. This is who connected us. And I'm happy to chat whenever you have time to do so. By putting it in there, by phrasing it like that, a lot of times people will automatically not necessarily think that there's an option not to have that meeting, right? By asking them when they're available and by saying, let me know when you're available, putting it in their court and saying that I'll be available at that time, oftentimes you're going to be able to get the meeting, or at the very least, you're going to get a quick decision of, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not interested in having this conversation. Very rarely will people say, oh, send me more information, or, tell me about this. Most of the time they'll just say, yeah, we can chat for 10 to 15 minutes, or we can chat for 30 minutes, whatever it is. Mention why you want to engage. Hey, I'd like to talk to you about our services. It can be as generic as that. Hey, this is Go Empire Group, full services agency. Would love to chat with you about your son. Would love to chat with you about how we feel like we're, a worthy agency, things of that nature, but keep it very short, succinct. You're just trying to get the appointment in this outreach. And then the call to action, request an appointment. Would love to chat with you, X, Y, and Z. Would love to do this. Would love to do that, right? You're just trying to get the appointment. You're not trying to do anything else except get more time for their undivided attention. Reaching out via telephone. The gatekeeper is the most important person other than the decision maker. The gatekeeper, if you're thinking about calling on a CEO, you're talking about an executive, this is the person that answers the phone. This is the executive assistant. This is the administrative assistant, whatever you want to call it. We call it the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is the person who you're first going to talk to. So you need to treat them with respect, because similarly with the opening, it's not going to necessarily get you a sale, but it can certainly ruin a sale. And I've seen that. I've dealt with many gatekeepers in my day, some that I know very, very personally, some that I've just had minimal relationship with, but you have to treat them with respect too, because a lot of time they'll go straight to the person, the CEO or the person who's the decision maker, and they'll say, hey, that guy was weird, or that guy didn't, wasn't very kind, or, didn't know how to take no, whatever it is. It can be really important. So treat them with respect, listen to their name, and use their name. This is how we personalize and customize the messaging, that I'm taking the time to listen, and then I am repeating the information that they're giving me. Be very succinct and clear. They have a million calls a day. They have a million emails a day. They're working on somebody's schedule. Usually they're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours, and they're dealing with a highly stressful situation with someone who has literally no time on their calendar. So it's really important to be succinct, be clear. This is who you are. This is why you're calling. Ask it if it's a good time. This is really important too. Ask if it's a good time to speak. If it's not, ask when there's a chance that you could call back. Is there a better time that you can call back? And if so, you'd be happy to do so. Valid business reason. Make sure that you're putting in there a very valid business reason. If there are any sort of references, hello, this person who I believe that asked me to call or put us in contact. Make sure to put that in there, because just mentioning someone that you have in common a lot of times can create that common ground, and it can create an opportunity that you'll at least get a conversation out of it. And then last thing, customization and attention to detail. Those are really important things. But again, getting to the gatekeeper, you're just trying to show that you're worth them passing your information and getting you a chance to get on the calendar for the decision maker. And then finally, landing an appointment. Once you've gotten to the decision maker, gatekeeper conversation goes well, gatekeeper puts you back to the decision maker. Landing an appointment, same thing. Introduce yourself, generate interest. This is who I am. This is what I'm looking to talk to you about. Ask for the appointment. We're not going to talk right now because I just got passed through from the gatekeeper. Let's not talk right now, but let's find a time, confirm a time and a place that we can have an appointment, and you can have, I can have your undivided attention for 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, whatever. Minimal, try to downplay the severity of the meeting. Always talk about how it's minimal time invested. If you have free services to offer, even better. I want to talk to you about these free services that we have. It'll only take 10 to 15 minutes. Do you have some time within this week or next to talk about this, X, Y, and Z? Right. So again, you're just trying to find another scheduled time where you're both on the line, where you both have undivided attention, to try to find, if they're interested or not. So just trying to land the other appointment. So targeting the right person, there are two different approaches that are there. One's the top-down approach, and the other is a bottom-up approach. So top-down simply means that you are starting at the top and you're trying to work your way down to the decision maker. And the bottom-up approach is quite the opposite. You're starting at the bottom and you're trying to work your way up to the top to find the decision maker. So decision makers can be all the way through. Sometimes, if you're talking about a minimal decision, the CEO is not going to get involved with that, or the vice president of sales is not going to get involved with that. When you're talking about the contrary and the bottom up, bigger decisions, sometimes you need help to get in at the lower levels. But then once you get up to the top, those are the people that are making the decision. So two different things. Get in the door however you can. Don't be afraid to reach out to multiple people, but be intentional and be personalized. If you feel like you're not having success, or if this person is truly not looking at your emails, try somebody different, right? If you have a mutual contact at an organization, ask them. It doesn't matter if they're in sales or not. What you could say is, hey, I have a friend that's in human resources. I'm trying to get a hold of, a salesperson. What you could do is you can reach out and you can say, hey, this is what I'm hoping to do. Would you mind connecting me to the right person? And usually that person can either write an email introducing you, which is great, having that referral, or they'll just give you the contact information, say, hey, this is the right person. You can say that, I told you to reach out, or just quite contrary, hey, this is at least the right person. Feel free to reach out. but don't be afraid to ask. Feel free to ask. And that's a great thing, as we talked about LinkedIn earlier. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to network with people. So if you have mutual connections, usually with a new organization, I'll try to find somebody who has a lot of mutual connections with me. And then from that point, I'll build a rapport with that person. And then I'll try to get them to connect me to the decision maker, so that I can be resourceful. But it's always less scary when you have people in connection that they can introduce you to different people. So use a reference. That's what we're just talking about. Use a reference to find the right person. Sport tourism, for example, what I do with the Huddle Up group, a lot of times I'm trying to get in touch with the director of sales, specifically on the sport sales side. So what I'll do is, if I'm not getting a response from that person directly, I will go up the chain and I will reach out to their vice president. I will reach out to their chief executive officer, or executive director, whomever it is for that organization. And I'll try to engage another person, usually which they'll bring in the person that I've been trying to get a hold of, or they'll say, hey, let's have a conversation. If it's worth it, then I'll send this to my salesperson. So here are the key players. We've talked a lot about the decision maker. Essentially, the decision maker is the person who has the final authority to accept or reject a proposal, and is accountable for that decision. Again, we talked about this. There can be multiple decision makers. Sometimes there are committees in place, but these are the people that you need to influence to get the sale. And this is the case for B2C as well to B2B. Then you have the influencer. This is an individual who has access to the decision maker and provides input that can sway that decision. So this is somebody that has the decision maker's ear and can talk on your behalf of why there's benefit to sport hospitality. Then you have the internal champion. This is someone who's supportive of ideas. They'll support a proposal within the organization to help secure a positive decision. Especially when talking about, maybe this is a salesperson within their organization as well. So this is somebody that, is internal to the organization, that is a fan of whatever it is that you're offering. Informants don't necessarily have a say in the final decision, but they can provide information that helps the seller in the next step. Gatekeepers can be great informants because they can have valuable information such as budget, such as agendas on meetings, things of that, what you need to sell that person to get them over the edge. So those are informants. People that are indifferent, people who really don't care about their outcome. Sometimes these people can be champions as well, but they're not necessarily going to be people that are involved in the decision making and probably don't have any skin in the game to push the needle one way or the other. And then, of course, you're going to have the anti-champion, especially when you're dealing with committees, which we do in government all the time. You're going to have the one person in the room, what we call the rock thrower, the person who is just the negative person, doesn't have any interest in what you're offering, and is going to try to bring down the decision to prevent whomever the decision maker from voting in favor of what you're offering. So those are the 5 or 6 different types of people that are there. Again, really most important through this, the decision maker and the gatekeeper, the person that you're targeting to get to the decision maker, and the person you have to get through to get to the decision maker. And then, of course, that decision maker who's ultimately making the final decision. So this is a lot of information. Opening the business to business relationship. This is something that very similar to opening the business to consumer relationship, but you have to keep in mind the differences. So make sure that you're taking in this information. This is a very long and lengthy chapter in your book. But again, this is the last chapter that we have before the midterm exam. So make sure that you're having a lot of information that you're gathering through this chapter, because this is all going to be on the midterm exam, and it'll also be on the final exam as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out as always. And I hope you have a wonderful week.